November 23, 1989. Black Friday morning. Michael Chen clocked in at Rapid Delivery Services at 5:47 a.m., loaded his van with packages bound for suburban neighborhoods across 3 counties, and pulled out of the depot parking lot into the pre-dawn darkness. His route sheet showed 127 stops, nothing unusual for the day after Thanksgiving. By 6:15 p.m., when he failed to return for check-in, his supervisor assumed he was running late. Heavy holiday traffic, extra deliveries, maybe a breakdown. But Michael Chen's van never came back. Neither did Michael. The police found his delivery van 3 days later, abandoned in a Walmart parking lot 40 miles from his route. Engine cold, keys missing, packages scattered in the back like someone had searched through them. Michael's wallet was on the dashboard, credit cards and $47 in cash untouched. His thermos of coffee, still half full, sat in the cup holder. The van's odometer showed 127 additional miles from his morning departure. 127 miles to nowhere, with no explanation. The investigation went cold within weeks. Michael Chen, 34 years old, father of 2 young daughters, had simply vanished. His wife Sarah was told he'd probably started a new life somewhere else. The insurance company delayed payment for 8 months, citing suspicious circumstances. Small-town whispers suggested gambling debts or another woman. His daughters, Emma and Lisa, grew up believing their father had chosen to abandon them. Then, 35 years later, a software update changed everything. Dr. Patricia Walsh was reviewing archive data from the early GPS tracking systems when she noticed an anomaly. A delivery van from 1989, one of the first vehicles equipped with primitive GPS logging, had recorded coordinates that didn't match its official route. The data had been corrupted for decades, but new algorithms finally decoded it. The van had traveled to a remote location 60 miles outside the city, stayed there for 47 minutes, then returned to the Walmart parking lot. The coordinates led to Millfield Quarry, abandoned since 1987. Sarah Chen, now Sarah Martinez after remarrying, received the call on a Tuesday morning while watering her garden. The voice was professional, careful. "This is Detective James Morrison with the County Sheriff's Office. We need to speak with you about your first husband, Michael Chen." She almost hung up. 35 years of learning to live without answers. 35 years of telling people Michael had left them. 35 years of protecting her daughters from the truth she'd never known herself. But something in the detective's voice made her pause. "We found his van," Detective Morrison said. "The real location. And we think we know what happened to your husband." Millfield Quarry had been filled with water since a spring broke through the limestone in 1988. The quarry company had abandoned it, letting nature take over. But drought conditions in recent months had lowered the water level significantly. A local fisherman, casting near the deeper end, had snagged something unusual, something metallic, something that looked like the corner of a vehicle. The dive team went down on a Wednesday morning. Visibility was poor, silt and algae making everything murky green. But there, 35 feet below the surface, they found a delivery van. A Rapid Delivery Services van, license plate matching the one that had disappeared in 1989. Michael Chen was still inside, still strapped in the driver's seat. Emma Chen Rodriguez was in the middle of a parent-teacher conference when her phone rang. She'd kept her maiden name hyphenated. One small way of honoring the father who'd left them. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something made her step outside to answer. "This is Detective Morrison with the County Sheriff's Office." "I need you to sit down." Emma laughed, a sharp sound. "I'm standing in a school hallway. What's this about?" "We found your father." The hallway seemed to tilt. 35 years of anger, of wondering, of explaining to her own children why Grandpa Michael had never been part of their lives. 35 years of Mother's Day cards that mentioned only one grandparent, of family trees with a missing branch, of 1,000 small moments when she'd wondered what he would have thought, what he would have said. "That's not possible," she whispered. "He left us." November 1989. He drove away. "Ma'am, I need you to come to the county building. Your mother is already on her way." The county building smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Emma found her mother in a plastic chair, still wearing her Walmart vest from work. At 67, Sarah looked nothing like the young woman who'd waited by the phone in 1989, hoping for word from her missing husband. Time had given her gray hair and careful walls around her heart. "They're saying it's Michael," Sarah said without looking up. After all this time, Detective Morrison was younger than Emma had expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the careful manner of someone who delivered bad news regularly. He sat across from them with a manila folder. "The van was submerged in Millfield Quarry," he began. "The medical examiner estimates it's been there since 1989. Your husband's remains were found inside, still in the driver's seat." Emma's chest tightened. "How do you know it's him?" "Dental records match. The van's registration matches. His driver's license was in his pocket, preserved by the cold water." Morrison pulled out a photograph. "We also found this on the dashboard." It was a picture Emma remembered taking. Her father holding both daughters on Christmas morning, 1988. She'd been 9, Lisa 7. They were all grinning, wearing matching pajamas Sarah had made. The photo was laminated, protected from the water, colors still bright after 35 years underwater. "He didn't leave us," Sarah whispered. "He didn't choose to go." "No, ma'am, he didn't." Morrison's voice was gentle. "But there's more you need to know. The medical examiner found evidence of trauma. Your husband didn't die in an accident." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Emma found herself counting the tiles in the ceiling, anything to avoid processing what Morrison was saying. Michael Chen was murdered. The word hung in the air like smoke. Murder. Not abandonment. Not a new life in another state. Not a midlife crisis or gambling debts or another woman. Murder. The medical examiner found blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with being struck with a heavy object. The injury would have been fatal. He was dead before the van entered the water. Sarah made a sound that wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a laugh. The insurance company said he ran off. The police said he probably started over somewhere else. Everyone said he left us. The case is being reopened as a homicide investigation, Morrison said. We'll need to interview family members, friends, anyone who might remember something from 1989. Emma stood up, sat down, stood up again. I want to see him. That's not advisable. 35 years underwater, even in cold conditions. I want to see the van then, his route sheet, his thermos, whatever you found. Morrison looked at Sarah, who nodded slowly. The van's at our impound facility. I can show you what we recovered. The impound lot sat behind the sheriff's station, rows of vehicles in various states of decay. Michael's delivery van was in the far corner, still dripping quarry water, covered in algae and silt. But it was unmistakably his van, the same dented front bumper Emma remembered from childhood, the same Rapid Delivery Services logo on the side. Morrison opened the driver's door carefully. The interior exhaled 35 years of stagnant water and silence. Emma's breath caught. The family photo was still clipped to the sun visor. Her and Lisa at ages 9 and 7, gap-toothed and giggling. Her father's coffee thermos sat in the cup holder, the blue one with the chip in the handle that he'd refused to throw away. His route sheet was in the glove compartment, Morrison said, handing her an evidence bag. The paper was pulpy but readable, Michael's neat handwriting listing addresses and delivery times. The last entry was at 3:47 p.m. Mrs. Henderson, 847 Oak Street. Package delivered. That was his final delivery, Emma said. Oak Street was near the end of his route. According to the GPS data, he left Oak Street at 3:52 p.m., but instead of returning to the depot, He drove to Millfield Quarry. The van stayed there for 47 minutes. Then someone drove it to the Walmart parking lot where it was found. Emma studied the route sheet. Her father's handwriting, familiar from birthday cards and homework help and grocery lists. Real. Present. Why would he go to the quarry? That's what we need to find out. Did your father ever mention the quarry? Did he know anyone who worked there or lived nearby? Emma shook her head. He wasn't the type to deviate from his route. Dad was methodical, always finished his deliveries and went straight home. He'd been doing the same routes for 8 years. Sarah joined them at the van. Michael never went anywhere he wasn't supposed to be. The only time he was ever late coming home was Christmas Eve 1988, when he stopped to buy last-minute presents. Morrison pulled out another evidence bag. We found this wedged under the passenger seat. Inside was a business card, water-stained but legible. Henderson Construction, LLC. Tommy Henderson, general contractor. Mrs. Henderson on Oak Street, Emma said. His last delivery. We'll be speaking with her, Morrison said. But there's something else. The original investigation files mention that someone called in a suspicious vehicle report the night your father disappeared. A delivery van seen at Millfield Quarry around dusk. But the investigating officer never followed up on it. Sarah's face hardened. They didn't look for him. They decided he'd run off and stopped caring. Different department then, different procedures. But we're looking at everything now. Morrison closed the van door gently. The case will take time to rebuild. 35 years is a long trail to follow. Emma touched the van's door handle, the same one her father had gripped thousands of times. Someone killed him and let us believe he abandoned us for 35 years. We're going to find out who, Morrison promised. That evening, Emma sat in her kitchen staring at a box of her father's belongings. Sarah had kept them all these years, stored in the attic like a museum of abandoned hope. Work uniforms still in their dry cleaning bags. His toolkit from the job before delivery driving. A photo album of family trips and birthday parties. Her phone rang. Lisa, calling from Portland where she lived with her husband and teenage son. Mom told me, Lisa said without preamble. Is it really him? It's really him. He's been in that quarry for 35 years. Silence on the line. Then Lisa started crying, really crying, the way she hadn't since childhood. I wrote him letters, she said. For years after he left, I wrote him letters and threw them away because I didn't know where to send them. Emma found herself crying too. I used to look for him in crowds. Even as an adult, I'd see men who looked like him and wonder if it was Dad, if he'd come back. He never left, Lisa whispered. He never chose to leave us. No, he didn't. They talked until midnight, sharing memories they'd buried, processing 35 years of misplaced anger. Their father hadn't abandoned them. Someone had taken him from them, then let them live with the lie. The next morning, Emma drove to Oak Street. Number 847 was a modest ranch house with a well-kept garden and American flag in the front yard. She parked across the street, trying to work up courage. This was the last place her father had been alive, the last person who'd seen him breathing. The woman who answered the door was in her 80s, gray-haired but sharp-eyed. You're one of Michael's daughters, she said before Emma could introduce herself. You look just like him. Mrs. Henderson? I'm Emma Chen Rodriguez. I wanted to ask you about the day my father disappeared. Mrs. Henderson stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind her. I've been wondering when someone would come ask me about that day. Come sit with me. They sat on wicker chairs that creaked in the morning breeze. Mrs. Henderson poured iced tea from a pitcher she'd apparently been expecting to use. Your father was a good man, she began. Always polite, always careful with packages. That day, November 23rd, he brought me a package from my daughter in California. Christmas decorations I'd asked her to send. Do you remember what time? Just before 4 p.m. I remember because my stories were starting on TV. Mrs. Henderson paused, choosing her words carefully. But there was something different that day. Your father seemed nervous, kept looking at his truck like he was expecting someone. Emma leaned forward. Someone was following him? I don't know about following, but there was another vehicle parked down the street. Dark sedan. Been there about 20 minutes when your father arrived. The driver was just sitting there, watching. Emma's pulse quickened. Did you see the driver? Man in a suit, maybe 40s. When your father finished with my delivery and got back in his van, the sedan pulled out behind him. They left together, one right after the other. You told the police this? Mrs. Henderson's face darkened. I tried to. Called the station 3 times. The officer who came to take my statement said I was probably mistaken, that delivery trucks and sedans leave neighborhoods all the time. Said there was no evidence your father had been followed. Emma thought about the GPS data, her father driving to an abandoned quarry instead of home. The construction company business card we found in Dad's van. Henderson Construction. Any relation? My late husband's business. Tom ran it until he passed in 1987. But I kept some of the cards. Still use them for contractors who work on the house. Mrs. Henderson went inside, returned with an identical card. Your father asked for one that day. Said he might need some work done on your house. We never needed construction work. That's what I thought was odd. But he insisted. Put the card in his shirt pocket. Mrs. Henderson studied Emma's face. There's something else. About an hour after your father left, the same sedan came back. Parked in the same spot, stayed maybe 10 minutes, then left again. Emma felt cold despite the morning sun. Someone was watching you too. Felt like it. I kept my curtains closed for weeks after that. Didn't feel safe until the police said your father had run off to start a new life. Mrs. Henderson laughed bitterly. Guess that was a lie. Mrs. Henderson, the business card. Did you ever give one to anyone else around that time? Anyone who might have known my father's route? Funny you should ask. About a week before your father disappeared, another delivery driver came by. Said he was covering routes, learning the addresses. Asked if I had any regular deliveries, what times they usually came. Emma's mouth went dry. What company? Same as your father's. Rapid Delivery Services. Said his name was Tony something. Drove the same type of van. Emma called Detective Morrison from her car. I need to know about other delivery drivers at Rapid Delivery Services in 1989. Specifically someone named Tony. What did you find? Emma told him about Mrs. Henderson's account, the sedan, the other driver who'd scouted the route. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. We'll pull the employment records, he said. But Emma, if someone at your father's company was involved, this case just got a lot more complicated. That afternoon, Emma met her mother at the Rapid Delivery Services office. The company had moved locations twice since 1989, but the owner, Frank Russo, was the same man who'd hired Michael Chen in 1981. Russo was 73 now, stooped and gray, but his eyes sharpened when Morrison mentioned Tony. Tony Castellano, Russo said immediately. Worked here about 6 months in 1989. Started in May, fired in December. Why was he fired? Morrison asked. Packages going missing from his van. Cash deliveries that never reached their destinations. I suspected him of theft but couldn't prove it until Christmas season when several expensive items disappeared. Russo pulled out an old filing cabinet. Here's his file. The photo showed a man in his 30s, dark hair, thin face, the kind of forgettable appearance that made him perfect for blending in. Anthony Castellano, hired May 15, 1989. Terminated December 18, 1989. Did he know Michael's routes? Emma asked. All the drivers knew each other's routes. We rotated sometimes, covered for sick days. Tony was always asking questions about the better routes. the ones with more valuable packages. Morrison studied the file. Any trouble between Tony and Michael specifically? Russo nodded grimly. Michael caught Tony stealing in October. Packages from a jewelry shipment. Michael reported it to me, but I couldn't fire Tony without more evidence. Michael wasn't happy about that. So Tony knew Michael had reported him, Sarah said. And he knew he was being watched, Emma added. That's motive for murder. Morrison closed the file. Do you have a current address for Anthony Castellano? Last I heard, he was in prison. Armed robbery, maybe 2005. But that's all I know. They ran Anthony Castellano's name through the system. Armed robbery in 2005 served 8 years. Assault charges in 2014. Breaking and entering in 2018. A career criminal who'd started with package theft and escalated. His last known address was a motel on the outskirts of town. The Sunrise Motel looked like it hadn't seen renovations since the 1970s. Peeling paint, broken neon sign, the kind of place where people paid cash and didn't ask questions. The desk clerk, a woman with too much makeup and suspicious eyes, claimed she'd never heard of Anthony Castellano. But in the parking lot, Morrison spotted a rusted sedan that matched the DMV records. Pennsylvania plates, registered to Tony Castellano. Room 237 was on the second floor, curtains drawn, no sign of movement. Morrison knocked. Police. We'd like to speak with Anthony Castellano. Silence. Then footsteps, a chain sliding, the door cracking open. The man who peered out was 20 years older than his mugshot, gray-bearded and hollow-cheeked, but unmistakably the same person. What do you want? We're investigating the disappearance of Michael Chen in 1989. We'd like to ask you some questions. Tony's face went blank. I don't know anything about that. You worked with Michael at Rapid Delivery Services. That was a long time ago. Tony tried to close the door, but Morrison had his foot against it. We can do this here or at the station. Your choice. Tony looked at Emma, standing behind Morrison. Recognition flickered in his eyes. You're one of his kids. You look like him. You knew my father. I knew a lot of people back then. Tony opened the door wider, stepped onto the walkway. He was thin, nervous, wearing clothes that had seen too many washes. Michael was a good driver. Shame what happened to him. What do you think happened to him? Morrison asked. Same as everyone else. He ran off. Started over. Guys do that sometimes when the pressure gets too heavy. Emma stepped forward. What pressure? Tony's eyes darted between them. Family pressure. Money problems. You know, my father didn't have money problems, Emma said firmly. And he wouldn't have left his family. People do crazy things. Tony pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. Maybe he was in some kind of trouble. Morrison pulled out his phone, showed Tony a photo of the van being pulled from the quarry. We found him. He was murdered. The cigarette dropped from Tony's fingers. His face went white. What? Someone killed Michael Chen and dumped his van in Millfield Quarry. It's been there for 35 years. Tony sat heavily on the motel room's doorstep. Jesus Christ. Murder. Where were you on November 23, 1989? Morrison asked. 35 years ago? How would I remember that? It was the day after Thanksgiving. The day Michael Chen disappeared. Tony was quiet for a long moment, staring at the cracked concrete. I was home, watching football. Anyone who can verify that? I lived alone then. Emma knelt next to Tony, her voice gentle. Someone saw you on Michael's route that day. A witness saw you questioning Mrs. Henderson about delivery schedules. Tony's head snapped up. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Because... Tony stopped himself, realizing he was about to say too much. Morrison leaned closer. Because what, Tony? Because I wasn't working that route. I was covering the north side that day. So you do remember November 23rd. Tony threw his cigarette down, ground it under his heel. Look, Michael was a good guy. He didn't deserve what happened. But I don't know anything about murder. What do you know? Emma asked. Tony looked at her for a long moment, seemed to be weighing something. There were other people involved in the package thefts. People who wanted Michael to keep quiet. Morrison pulled out his notebook. What people? I can't say. They're still around. Still dangerous. Tony, a man was murdered. His family lived for 35 years thinking he'd abandoned them. Whatever you're afraid of can't be worse than that. Tony stood up, walked to the motel railing, stared out at the parking lot. You don't understand. These weren't random thefts. There was a whole operation, people on the inside, people with connections. Michael stumbled into something bigger than stolen packages. Emma felt her pulse racing. What kind of operation? Drug running. Using the delivery company to move product between cities. Small packages, looked like normal deliveries, but they were full of cocaine, heroin, whatever sold well. Morrison stepped closer. Who was running it? Frank Russo knew, the owner. He was taking a cut to let them use his trucks. But there were others, people with real money, real power. And my father found out, Emma said. Michael was clean, honest. When he caught me stealing packages, I tried to explain it wasn't just theft. But he said crime was crime, didn't matter who was behind it. He was going to report everything to the police. The pieces were falling into place. Michael Chen, the honest delivery driver who wouldn't look the other way. The perfect witness to bring down a drug operation. They killed him to keep him quiet, Sarah said. She'd been standing silently, but now her voice was hard with anger. I don't know who pulled the trigger, Tony said. I just know Michael called in sick the day he disappeared. Said he was meeting with someone about the thefts. Next thing I heard, he was gone. Morrison closed his notebook. You're coming with us to make a formal statement. I can't. They'll kill me too. Who will kill you, Tony? Tony looked around the parking lot like he expected gunmen to emerge from behind every car. The same people who killed Michael. The same people who've been watching me for 35 years. Making sure I keep my mouth shut. Emma followed his gaze. Someone's been watching you? You think I've been living in places like this by choice? Every time I try to settle down, get a regular job, they find me. Remind me what happens to people who talk too much. Morrison pulled out his radio. I'm calling for backup. You're going into protective custody. It won't matter. They have connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. How do you think a drug operation ran through a delivery company for years without getting caught? Emma felt the ground shifting under her feet. Her father hadn't just stumbled onto package theft. He'd uncovered corruption that went all the way to the top. Frank Russo, she said. He's still running the company. Still connected to the same people. Tony nodded grimly. And now you've stirred up a hornet's nest by pulling that van out of the quarry. 2 police cruisers pulled into the motel parking lot. Morrison waved them over. We need to get you somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe, Tony said. But he went with them anyway. At the sheriff's station, Tony told his story in detail. The drug operation had started small, just a few packages here and there. But by 1989, it was moving serious weight between major cities. Rapid delivery services was perfect cover. Legitimate packages mixed with illegal ones. Drivers who didn't ask questions about unusual shipments. Michael wasn't supposed to be working November 23rd, Tony explained. I was supposed to take his route that day, but I called in sick, had a meeting with my suppliers. So they gave Michael your route, Morrison said. With packages he wasn't supposed to see. High-value shipments going to specific addresses. When Michael started asking questions about why he was delivering packages to empty buildings, they knew he was too smart to fool. Emma sat in the observation room watching through one-way glass. Who gave the order to kill him? Tony looked directly at the mirror, as if he could see her. I never knew names, just code words, phone numbers that changed every few weeks. But the money came from high up. City council members, business owners, people who had too much to lose if the operation got exposed. Morrison leaned forward. We need names, Tony. Specific people. There was a lawyer handled the legal side. Made sure drivers who got arrested had bail money, made sure cases got dismissed on technicalities. His name was Patterson, Richard Patterson. Emma recognized the name. Patterson had been the city attorney in 1989, later became a judge. He died in 2018, but his son still ran the law practice. Anyone else? The money man was someone local, someone with legitimate businesses to launder through. But I never met him directly, just heard whispers that he owned half the town. The interview continued for 2 hours. Tony gave them everything he could remember, dates, locations, methods of operation. But the more he talked, the more it became clear how deep the corruption had run. 35 years, Tony said finally. I've been waiting for this day for 35 years. Waiting for someone to find Michael, to ask the right questions, to finally believe the truth. Emma entered the interview room. Why didn't you come forward before now? Tony looked exhausted, older than his years. Because I was a coward. Because I was afraid. Because Michael was the brave one, not me. But you're talking now. Because he's been in that water for 35 years. And his family deserves to know why. The investigation exploded outward from there. Morrison brought in federal agents, investigators with jurisdiction over organized crime. Frank Russo was arrested at his home, charged with conspiracy and accessory to murder. His current delivery drivers were interviewed, revealing that the drug operation had never really stopped, just gotten more sophisticated. Richard Patterson Jr. was arrested at his law office, computer hard drives seized, client files subpoenaed. The money trail led to a dozen local businesses, shell companies, properties bought and sold with drug profits. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Emma was leaving her daughter's soccer practice when she noticed the black sedan following her. Same make and model as the one Mrs. Henderson had described from 1989. She took 4 random turns, and the sedan stayed with her. Her hands shook as she called Morrison. Someone's following me. Where are you now? Driving toward the police station. Black sedan, can't see the plates. Keep driving here. I'll have units intercept. The sedan peeled off 2 blocks from the station, disappearing into traffic. But the message was clear. The people who'd killed Michael Chen were still out there, still watching, still dangerous. That night, Morrison called Emma at home. We found something in Russo's office. A safe behind a filing cabinet, filled with records going back to 1989. What kind of records? Payment ledgers, code names for drivers, delivery schedules, amounts moved. And Emma, your father's name is in there, listed as a problem to be eliminated. Emma closed her eyes. Seeing it in writing made it real in a way testimony couldn't. Someone had put her father's name on a kill list. There's more. The ledger shows payments to a police officer, monthly amounts from 1987 through 2003. Badge number 447. Emma's blood ran cold. Who was badge 447 in 1989? Officer Dennis Shaw. He was the responding officer when your father disappeared. The one who decided Michael had probably run off and closed the case. Shaw was retired now, 72 years old, living in a lakeside cabin an hour outside town. When Morrison and federal agents arrived with a warrant, they found him burning papers in his backyard fire pit. The arrest was quick and quiet. Shaw, caught red-handed destroying evidence, broke within hours of questioning. He'd been taking payments from the drug operation since 1987, providing protection, making sure investigations got buried, ensuring that honest cops stayed away from certain cases. Michael Chen was getting too close, Shaw admitted. He'd identified patterns in the deliveries, was asking questions about why certain routes always went to the same addresses. When he threatened to go to the FBI, they decided he had to be stopped. "Who gave the order?" Morrison asked. "I just did what I was told. Made sure the investigation went nowhere. Made sure the family believed he'd run off." "Who told you what to do?" Shaw looked older than his years, broken by the weight of 35 years of corruption. "The money came from a trust fund, administered by Patterson's law firm. I never knew who the actual source was. Just got my payments every month and kept my mouth shut. The federal investigation kept expanding. The trust fund led to offshore accounts, shell companies in 3 countries, a money laundering operation that had moved millions of dollars over 3 decades. The drug operation that had started in the late 1980s had evolved into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. But they still didn't have the person who'd pulled the trigger." Emma was going through her father's belongings again, looking for any clue the investigators might have missed, when she found it. A small appointment book, the kind people used before smartphones. November 1989 was near the end. November 23rd had a single entry. Meeting JM 4:30 p.m. Millfield Quarry. JM, someone with those initials, had lured her father to the quarry where he was killed. Emma called Morrison. "I found something. My father had a meeting scheduled the day he died. Someone with the initials JM. We'll cross-reference those initials with everyone involved in the case." The list was surprisingly short. James Morrison, the detective investigating the case, but he was only 12 years old in 1989. Jerry Martinez, one of the delivery drivers, but he'd moved to California in 1988. And then a name that made Emma's stomach drop. John Morrison, James Morrison's father. The police chief in 1989. John Morrison had been dead for 10 years, a respected law enforcement officer who'd served the community for 30 years. His funeral had been attended by hundreds of people, including Emma and her mother. But now his initials were in Michael Chen's appointment book, connected to a meeting at a quarry where Michael had been murdered. "It can't be," Detective Morrison said when Emma called. "My father was an honest cop. He fought corruption his whole career." "The appointment book doesn't lie," Emma said gently, "and it explains how the cover-up was so effective. Your father was in charge of the investigation." The silence on the line stretched for long moments. Finally, James Morrison spoke, his voice hollow. "I became a cop because of him. Because he taught me about justice, about doing the right thing. Maybe he was trying to do the right thing. Maybe he was meeting with my father to help expose the corruption. Or maybe he was part of it. They had to know." James Morrison, with tremendous personal courage, authorized a search of his father's papers, stored in the family garage since his death. What they found broke the case wide open. John Morrison had kept detailed records of his involvement in the drug operation, including recorded phone conversations with co-conspirators. He'd been the inside man, the one who made sure investigations got misdirected, evidence got lost, witnesses got intimidated. But the recordings revealed something else. John Morrison had been trying to get out. In a conversation dated November 20th, 1989, 3 days before Michael's death, John Morrison could be heard arguing with someone about ending the operation. "Too many people are asking questions," his voice said on the grainy recording. "That delivery driver, Michael Chen, he's getting close to the truth. We need to shut down before this explodes." The other voice, electronically disguised, was cold and calculating. "Chen needs to be eliminated. You set up the meeting. We'll handle the rest. I won't be part of murder. You're already part of murder. 3 drivers are dead because they asked too many questions. You think you can walk away clean? I have evidence. Insurance. If anything happens to me or my family, it all goes public. Your insurance won't protect the delivery driver. He's meeting you Thursday at the quarry. Come alone, and maybe we can work something out." The recording ended, but it was clear what had happened. John Morrison, trying to protect Michael Chen, had walked into a trap. Both men had been murdered at the quarry, but John Morrison's body had never been found. James Morrison listened to his father's voice with tears streaming down his face. They killed him too. Dad wasn't corrupt, he was trying to stop them. Emma felt a strange sense of completion. Her father had died trying to do the right thing, and John Morrison had died trying to protect him. But their killer was still out there. The investigation took a dramatic turn when they searched Millfield Quarry more thoroughly. Using ground-penetrating radar and specialized diving equipment, they found John Morrison's remains 100 yards from where Michael's van had been discovered. He'd been shot execution-style and weighed down with concrete blocks. But they also found something else. A waterproof case, hidden in the rocks near Morrison's body. Inside were documents, photographs, and more recordings. John Morrison's insurance policy. The photographs showed drug shipments being loaded at the rapid delivery depot. Men in expensive suits overseeing operations. And in one crucial photo, the face of the man who'd been giving orders. Victor Castellanos, Tony's older brother. A successful businessman who owned 3 restaurants, a construction company, and sat on the city council. He'd been the money behind the entire operation, using his legitimate businesses to launder drug profits, while his younger brother Tony and others handled the street-level work. But Victor Castellanos had died in a car accident in 2019. The case seemed to lead to another dead end, until Emma received a phone call that changed everything. "Miss Chen Rodriguez? This is Maria Castellanos, Victor's widow." Emma recognized the name from newspaper articles about prominent local families. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Castellanos? I need to meet with you. About your father. About what really happened in 1989. They met at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Maria Castellanos was in her 60s, elegantly dressed, carrying herself with the confidence of someone used to wealth and influence. But her eyes held secrets. "Victor didn't die in a car accident," she said without preamble. "He was murdered, just like your father." Emma nearly dropped her coffee cup. "What?" "Someone's been eliminating everyone connected to the 1989 operation. Victor figured it out too late. He tried to go to the FBI, tried to make a deal to testify. 3 days later, his brakes failed on a mountain highway. Who's killing them?" Maria pulled out a manila envelope. "Someone who's been planning this for 30 years. Someone who was there at the beginning, who knew all the players, who's been systematically eliminating witnesses to protect their own involvement." Inside the envelope were financial records, showing payments from a Swiss bank account to various assassins and fixers over 3 decades. The account holder's name was coded, but the payment dates corresponded to suspicious deaths going back to 1990. Ben Hutchkins, the truck driver who asked too many questions in 1990. Heart attack at age 32. Mike Garrett, the cop who tried to investigate in 1993. Car accident on a clear day. Louise Palmer, the prosecutor who was building a case in 1998. Mugging gone wrong. Victor realized someone was working through a list, eliminating everyone who could connect them to the original operation. He started investigating on his own, trying to figure out who was behind it. Emma studied the financial records. Did he find out? He found out about the Swiss account. He found out about the pattern of deaths. But before he could identify the account holder, they got to him. "Why are you telling me this now?" Maria's hands shook as she lit a cigarette. "Because they're not done. Your father's body surfacing has stirred everything up again. People are talking, asking questions, remembering things they'd forgotten. The killer knows it's only a matter of time before someone connects all the dots. And you think I'm next? I think we're all next. Me, because Victor told me everything before he died. You, because you're pushing the investigation. Detective Morrison, because he's asking the right questions. Tony, because he's finally telling the truth." Emma felt cold. How many people are we talking about? Maybe a dozen still alive who know pieces of the truth. maybe fewer. But here's the thing, whoever's behind this has been patient for 30 years. They've had time to plan, to position themselves, to build the perfect cover. Any idea who it could be? Maria stubbed out her cigarette. Someone with access to law enforcement files, to know which investigations were getting close. Someone with political connections to protect the operation for so long. Someone wealthy enough to afford Swiss bank accounts and professional killers. Emma thought about the list of suspects they'd identified. Most were dead or in prison. What about Frank Russo? Russo was middle management. He didn't have the sophistication for something like this. Patterson the lawyer? Richard Patterson Sr. was corrupt, but he was also sloppy. This person has been meticulous for 3 decades. Emma's phone rang. Detective Morrison. Emma, we have a problem. Tony Castellanos was found dead in his cell this morning. Emma's blood went cold. How? Apparent suicide. Hanged himself with bedsheets. But there are some inconsistencies. Emma looked at Maria, who had gone pale. They got to him. Who? The same person who's been killing witnesses for 30 years. Tony was the last person alive who could identify the voice on John Morrison's recordings. Emma hung up and turned to Maria. We need to go to the FBI. Federal protection, witness security, whatever it takes. They've had 30 years to position people inside law enforcement. How do we know who to trust? The question hung in the air. If the killer had been eliminating witnesses for 3 decades, they had to have inside help, connections that reached into police departments, prosecutors' offices, maybe even federal agencies. Emma made a decision. We need to draw them out. Make them come after us on our terms. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way to finally get justice for my father. The plan was dangerous but simple. Emma would announce publicly that she had new evidence about her father's murder. Evidence that would identify the killer. They would schedule a press conference for the following Friday, giving the killer time to plan but forcing them to act. Detective Morrison objected strenuously. You're making yourself a target. I'm already a target. This way, at least we know when and where they'll come for me. The press conference was scheduled for the courthouse steps at noon on Friday. Emma spent the week preparing, working with federal agents to set up surveillance, plan security, position backup. If the killer took the bait, they'd be ready. But on Thursday night, everything went wrong. Emma was at home, reviewing her statement for the press conference, when her security system alarm started blaring. She looked at the monitor and saw smoke pouring from her garage. Her car was on fire. She called 911, then Detective Morrison. My car's been torched. They're trying to trap me in the house. Get out now. We're 2 minutes away. Emma grabbed her purse and the copies of Maria's documents, headed for the back door. But as she opened it, she found herself face to face with a figure in dark clothing, wearing a ski mask. The intruder had a gun pointed at her chest. Inside. Now. Emma backed into her kitchen, hands raised. What do you want? The documents. Everything Victor Castellanos gave his wife. Everything your father hid before he died. The voice was electronically disguised, but Emma caught something familiar in the cadence. The word choice. I don't have them here. Where are they? Emma heard sirens approaching. The fire department responding to her garage fire. In a safety deposit box. I can get them for you. You have until tomorrow to retrieve them and bring them to Millfield Quarry. Midnight. Come alone. And if I don't? The intruder moved closer, gun steady. Your daughter plays soccer at Jefferson Elementary. Your mother works at Walmart on Highway 6. Your sister lives in Portland with her family. I know where to find everyone you care about. Emma's blood turned to ice. Don't hurt them. This is between us. Midnight tomorrow. Quarry. Bring everything or your family starts disappearing. The intruder backed toward the door. And cancel that press conference. If you try to involve the police, people die. They vanished into the darkness just as the fire trucks arrived. Emma called Morrison from the fire chief's vehicle. They were here. Threatened my family. We're putting everyone under protection immediately. No police. They said if I involve law enforcement, they'll start killing people. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Emma, this person has been killing people for 30 years. You can't trust them to honor any deal. I can't risk my family, and I can't let you walk into a trap. Emma made her choice. I'm going to the quarry tomorrow night, with backup or without it. The next day crawled by. Emma retrieved the documents from the safety deposit box, made copies, arranged for them to be delivered to multiple news organizations if she didn't check in by morning. If she was going to die at Millfield Quarry like her father, at least the truth would survive. At 11:30 p.m., she drove toward the quarry. Her phone had been buzzing all evening with calls from Morrison, from federal agents, from her mother and sister. She'd turned it off. This was something she had to do alone. The quarry looked different at night. Moonlight reflecting off the black water, shadows deep and menacing among the equipment and rock piles. Emma parked where the GPS indicated her father's van had emerged from the water and waited. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the tree line. Same dark clothing, same ski mask, but without the gun visible. Emma got out of her car, documents in hand. You came, the figure called across the water. I keep my promises. Unlike you, the figure moved closer, staying in the shadows. Your father made promises too. Said he wouldn't go to the FBI. Said he just wanted to quit the company and walk away quietly. Emma's heart hammered. You were there. You killed him. Your father was an idealist. He thought honesty mattered more than survival. John Morrison thought the same thing. They were both wrong. And you've been killing witnesses ever since. The figure laughed, a sound that made Emma's skin crawl. I've been protecting myself, eliminating threats. Your father started a chain reaction that could have destroyed everything I'd built. Emma held up the documents. It's over now. These prove everything. Who you are, what you did, how you've been covering it up for 30 years. Give them to me. First, I want to know why. Why my father? Why all those other people? The figure moved into a shaft of moonlight, began pulling off the ski mask. Because some secrets are worth any price to protect. Emma gasped as the face was revealed. Judge Patricia Walsh, the same woman who'd been involved in analyzing the original GPS data that broke the case open. The person who'd helped decode the corrupted files, who'd been trusted with the evidence from the very beginning. You were the voice on John Morrison's recordings, Emma said. I was the brains behind everything. John Morrison was useful for protection inside law enforcement, but I was the one who built the network, managed the money, eliminated problems. But John got weak, wanted out. Your father was asking too many questions. Judge Walsh pulled out a gun. I've been eliminating loose ends for 3 decades. You're just the latest. Emma backed toward the water. The FBI knows about the Swiss account. They're tracing the payments. The Swiss account belongs to a shell company that belongs to another shell company. It will take them years to unravel, and by then all the witnesses will be gone. Including me. Including you. Just like your father, you're too stubborn to walk away. Emma heard something behind her. Car engines, doors slamming. Detective Morrison's voice calling her name. Judge Walsh raised the gun. You brought backup. That wasn't the deal. I didn't bring them, Emma said honestly. Morrison appeared at the tree line with federal agents, weapons drawn. Judge Walsh put down the gun. Walsh laughed. Detective Morrison. Johnny's boy. Did you know your father tried to back out at the last minute? Tried to protect the delivery driver. I know he died trying to do the right thing. He died because he was weak. Just like your delivery driver. Just like Emma here. Walsh swung the gun toward the approaching officers. Emma saw her chance and dove sideways, rolling behind a pile of rocks. Gunfire erupted across the quarry. muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. When the shooting stopped, Judge Walsh lay motionless at the water's edge, her blood mixing with the same water where Michael Chen had been hidden for 35 years. The aftermath took months to sort out. Judge Walsh's financial records, computer files, and personal documents revealed the scope of the operation. She'd been the mastermind from the beginning, using her position first as a prosecutor, then later as a judge, to protect the drug operation, eliminate threats, and accumulate wealth in offshore accounts. The Swiss bank account alone contained $47 million, proceeds from 3 decades of drug running, money laundering, and contract killing. Her home safe contained detailed records of every murder, every bribe, every cover-up she'd orchestrated. Emma testified before a federal grand jury, helping to unravel the conspiracy that had taken her father's life. Dozens of people were indicted, from police officers to city officials to business owners who'd unknowingly laundered drug money through their operations. But the most important testimony came from the recordings found in Judge Walsh's safe. She'd kept audio of every conversation, every planning session, every order she'd given to eliminate witnesses. Her own voice, preserved on tape, confessing to 37 murders over 3 decades. On the first anniversary of finding Michael's van in the quarry, Emma stood at Millfield Quarry with her family. The water was clear now, the crime scene tape was gone, and the place looked almost peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. Sarah placed flowers at the water's edge. "I used to hate this place. Now it feels like Michael's finally at rest." Lisa flew in from Portland with her son, now 17 and bearing a strong resemblance to the grandfather he'd never met. "I want to know everything about him," he told Emma. "Not just how he died, but how he lived." Emma pulled out a photo album she'd assembled from her father's belongings. Pictures of Michael Chen with his daughters at work, fixing things around the house, being the ordinary, decent man he'd been before someone decided he was a threat. "He was stubborn," she told her nephew. "Stubborn about doing the right thing, even when it was dangerous. Even when it would have been easier to look the other way." Detective Morrison joined them at the quarry. The federal task force wrapped up yesterday. 39 convictions, including posthumous charges against Judge Walsh. "Your father's case is officially closed." Emma nodded. "And the other victims? All solved. 35 years of cold cases. Closed because your father's van surfaced and you wouldn't give up asking questions." They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the water where so many secrets had been hidden. Emma thought about the GPS data that had started it all, a technological breadcrumb trail that had survived decades underwater. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for not giving up. Maria Castellanos." Emma smiled. Maria had disappeared into witness protection after Judge Walsh's death, but she was alive and safe. Another family that could finally stop looking over their shoulders. As they prepared to leave, Emma's daughter ran up from the car. 8 years old, the same age Emma had been when her father disappeared. "Mommy, why are we here?" Emma knelt down to her daughter's level. "We're here to remember your grandfather. He was a very brave man who died trying to protect other people. Will you tell me about him?" Emma looked at the water where Michael Chen had spent 35 years waiting for the truth to surface. "I'll tell you everything, sweetheart. About how he was brave when it mattered, about how he never gave up on doing what was right, and about how sometimes the truth takes a very long time to come to light." "But it always does?" Emma smiled, thinking about GPS data and Swiss bank accounts, about witnesses who finally found the courage to speak and evidence that survived decades underwater. "Eventually, it always does." They drove away from Millfield Quarry as the sun was setting, leaving behind the place where Michael Chen had died but where the truth had finally been born. In the distance, a delivery truck rumbled down the highway, carrying packages to people who trusted that their driver would deliver them safely home. Just like Michael Chen had been trying to do 35 years ago, on a route that led him not home to his family, but to a quarry where he made his final delivery. the truth that would eventually set them all free. The GPS coordinates were entered into evidence as Exhibit A in the case of Pennsylvania versus the estate of Patricia Walsh. But Emma kept a copy of the printout in her father's memory box, right next to the family photo from his delivery van. Numbers on a screen that had become a roadmap to justice, proving that even 35 years later, even at the bottom of a dark quarry, the truth has a way of surfacing when the time is right. Michael Chen had been a delivery driver who delivered one last package. Justice for 37 victims, closure for dozens of families, and proof that sometimes the most ordinary people become heroes simply by refusing to look the other way. His route was finally complete.